And all right, we are live.
Hey, folks.
Hey, folks, and welcome to episode. This is 39, I believe. Jesus. Our theme tonight is theory and practice, and it'll be just Sarenth and I tonight. Melkor and Emily Hall are already in the chat. Hey, y'all, nice to see you.
Good seeing you all.
Before we get too far into it, give me a second, and I will get us started with a prayer.
Sounds good.
Hail, Freyr, Lord of the golden sun, gentle rains, and these early turnings. Hail, Freya, sacrificer, welcoming him back to the world and the work to be done. Joy on tongues and dirt on hands. Hail, Lupa, mother of the wild, who brings the fertility in, bringing it in from the cold of winter to the coming spring. Spring has sprung, and we are here. Hail to the spirits of land and earth, deep beneath our feet and right in the soil. Hail to the blooming seeds, sprouting and growing and pushing up from the earth, soaking in water, just beginning to germinate. Hail to the dreams of spring, coming growth and hope much needed in these times. May we tend you well and never forget. Pack warm us and keep us all. Best of Ohio.
Best New Heil, indeed.
Wow. Was not expecting to cry in the opening prayer. Okay, that's fine. Also, Jason says, Corinne and I are also here.
Yay!
And
I see it's a wolf. I can feel the homework being assigned. Well, you know.
Cheers.
Cheers. So, what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking an elderflower Tom Collins. So
for those who don't know what the fuck a Tom Collins is.
Yeah. I was going to explain. So a Tom Collins is basically an alcoholic lemonade, roughly. The traditional recipe is some lemon or lime juice, a little bit of simple syrup, a little bit of gin, and then top. Most of the drink is actually club soda or tonic or some kind of sparkling liquid, right? And then, serve over ice. The way that I make it tends to be so gin forward that it's not probably a proper Tom Collins by any stretch. I put in at least as much gin as I did tonic. It's fine. Mostly genuinely because I enjoy the flavor of gin. The really piney notes of it especially. Mm-hmm. And then this one in particular, I used agave syrup a little bit instead of simple syrup. And then most of the sweetness, though, is coming from an elderflower syrup that I picked up from IKEA because they have these really neat syrups, an elderflower one and a lingonberry. Yeah, lingonberry.
That makes sense, yeah.
They're both really delicious, and they go really, really well in cocktails as a simple syrup replacement. So,
I'll have to try that because I like the taste of lingonberry.
It's very good,
and I like the taste of elderflower as well. I actually still, I think, have that liqueur sitting around here somewhere.
Yeah, like a Saint Germain's type deal.
I have no fucking idea. I just threw a shitload of elderflowers into 100 proof vodka.
Oh, okay. So not a Saint Germain's. House-made one. Yeah, but that's neat.
You've tasted the result of it with the on Morgan meat I made.
Yeah.
Because I used that as an infusion into it.
Nice. It has been a long time since I had that. I vaguely recall.
Yes, it's very Fae-friendly.
Which is always good for the memory as it is.
Absolutely. Ooh. That's good to know. We'll have to go to IKEA sometime and get more lingonberry stuff. Yeah. I love lingonberry. So what I'm drinking tonight is Tin Cup. This was gifted to our household by the wonderful folks at the Temple of Arcadia, which is a very awesome pro-trans, pro-kink, pro-poly pagan group here in the Michigan area, lower southeast Michigan area. They're wonderful folks. I got to see them at con for the first time. And the Weirdlings workshop they put on together as a group was amazing. Very confirming.
Yeah, I saw them after that. I didn't get to attend the panel, but it seemed like a good time, and they seemed like good folks when I talked to them.
Oh yeah, we had them over here last night, and that's what they brought.
Jason, joining us. Tom Collins' delicious stuff. And I know you've got a bottle of mead there somewhere that you were also pouring from.
Yes, so I have it's from Apimed. It's a Trnava mead from Medovina. Let's see if I can get the camera to focus. There we go.
There we go.
Good shit. It's a product of Slovakia. It's a flower honey. Nice. The problem with having Schramm's as the gold standard is you're always comparing everything else to Schramm's, and it's not Schramm's, but damn, it's good.
Yep.
So I have an entire big fucking glass that I will be drinking later. And the last thing that I have as far as alcohol right this minute is the very last of my Gerstacker Blueberry Glühwein. And whether it's warmed up or whether it's cold, it doesn't matter. It's good shit.
Yep, that's fair. I just don't like blueberries, but yeah.
Oh, I love them. I'm a sucker. So, theory and practice.
Theory and practice. I don't know. This was your idea. You talk.
So, one of the biggest things that comes around again and again in different polytheist and occult circles is the difference between theorizing and... I just recently saw a Twitter thread today, actually. It wasn't just recently. It was like literally today, where there was an occultist, IAO313 or something like that. I can't quite remember their username. But they were bitching about how, there's one of two ways really at the end of the day to approach occultism and spiritual work. And that's to approach it as spirituality or to approach it as essentially mentally masturbating. I am paraphrasing the shit out of their Twitter thread. There was like a 4 or 5 section Twitter thread. Mm-hmm. But long story short, my initial off-the-cuff reaction was kind of like, oh, that's kind of dickish. But you know what? I read it a couple of times through and went, no, that makes total sense. Because at the end of the day, either you are mentally masturbating or you're actually engaging in something that means something. And what they weren't saying was, only this way is valid. What they were saying was, you actually at some point have to take what you're doing with some amount of seriousness and actually commit to the bit and do it. Mm-hmm. And I think that, for me, is a big difference between theory and practice, because we can have armchair discussions of, and God knows I do a lot of theory crafting work through my Patreon with all the topic suggestions I have. But I think part of what sets myself and other people who actually do the work apart is we can give you real-life examples of where I went and did the thing and here's what happened. And it may not apply to every scenario, but I can at least say, well, this is how I've done work with trolls. And this is the result. The thing that makes the difference between theory and practice is putting yourself at risk in some cases, or just putting yourself out there and saying, "All right, spirits. So there's this thing I want to try. What do you think?" And you'll have something like, say, Kat Heath had this wonderful mound workshop I took with Emily, and it was part of it was about mound work itself as a spiritual practice. The first part of it being a lot of theory work, but the second half of it almost entirely being, okay, so we've got all the history and the theory out of the way. Let's see what this looks like. And that's part of what I love about Kat Heath's work in general is the theory stuff's up front, and then all the work stuff is towards the back. That's why I like Elves, Witches, and Gods, which is a book she put out through, I think, Llewellyn. Excellent book, highly recommended for anybody looking at Seder. But the difference between theory and practice is doing the thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I like this quote a lot. Practice makes practice. Yes.
Kind of. On that note, so is that how you would generally approach it, though? Is you would play theory first, then practice? Almost
all the time, if for no other reason than having context matters.
Mm-hmm.
So I could throw some random schmuck into a Seder ritual. However, they're likely to get more out of it, or at least be less at risk of a spirit taking over their body or doing weird fuck shit with them, if they know why they're doing what they're doing and what the safety measures are in place. This is also the other part of theory is knowing why you're doing what you're doing. So for me, a large part of a lot of these kinds of conversations, people will say, "Oh, well, this hurts this animal and this hurts this spirit and da 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 da." Well, okay, have you actually fucking tried it? Like everybody will say, "Oh, well, iron repels the Fae." Okay, have you actually fucking tried it? There are some Fae that do not give a shit.
Yeah.
There are some Alfar that do not give a shit.
I'd say more Alfar that tend to not give a shit.
I agree.
And
the people will be like, "Oh, well, this is cold steel." Cold steel means it's got an edge on it, asshole. Also, Thank you, Nicole, for that, because I took your workshop.
Yeah, it's really funny. The original one they were saying
Nicole and Kai. Excuse me, Nicole and Kai. Excuse
Nicole and Kai, yeah. But yeah, the old things of, cold iron repels them. Yeah, they were saying fucking weapons. You know what they're weak against? Stab the motherfucker.
Pretty much. Fucking weird, right? Turns out
that's most things. I also don't like being stabbed.
Yeah, it's weird. When you kill people, they die. Our new bird Zazu is fully watching and listening to you, Star as well. That poor bird. Yeah, works on most people. Yeah, no joke, right? Fucking weird.
All right, so then what about when you're cutting entirely new paths, when there isn't theory?
Well, okay. I'm gonna cheat and return to theory.
Okay.
Because if you don't have theory, you don't know if you're blazing new territory or if you're just being a jackass walking in circles.
Okay.
If you don't know how to read a compass, and you don't know how to read a map, and you are forging a new trail, and you're literally just walking next to the old trail, you're just over by a couple of centimeters, cool. You're hacking and slashing through the forest, but you're actually not progressing the trail forward anymore. You're blazing something that is parallel. So part of why theory is so fucking important is so you can actually look at people who've already blazed the trail, and you can choose whether or not to accept their experiences, their theories, etc. But if you don't know the ground that's already been laid, you may not actually be trailblazing. You might just be repeating somebody else's experiments, which is fine if that's how you want to use your time. But if you actually want to advance the craft, you need to know where it's been. So theory involves history. Theory involves the practicalities of what this means. It involves having a cohesive, or at least a cogent worldview, so that you can test your ideas in an arena where you have knowns. Mm-hmm. Because the difference between fucking around and doing science is writing shit down, right? Thank you, Mythbusters. Well, the difference between an accomplished occultist and somebody who is just fucking around and dabbling is you write it down in your grimoire, your book of shadows, your tool notebook, whatever the fuck it is. You actually write shit down. You actually take some kind of notes. And this is coming from a person who absolutely blows goats at fucking journaling, mind you, folks.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference between me fucking around and actually building something useful is being able to document it, being able to hand it to other people and say, hey, does this make any fucking sense to you? And then doing my due diligence, whether it's divination, talking with community members, handing this to somebody and saying, hey, you try this, what do you think? So you got to really figure out whether or not you're actually blazing new territory or you're just fucking about. And if you're just fucking about, just be real about that.
Honestly, that was pretty much exactly where I was hoping you would take it, because that's kind of my approach as well. And it actually reminds me, I'm like immediately thrown back to my days at in college. The concept of a literature review, which is basically you go see what the hell's out there about whatever topic you're looking at,
Yep.
and then you figure out kind of, you don't need to become a full-on expert, but you need to at least have a lay of the land, know roughly what's going on.
Right.
So that you can know whether what you're doing is new, whether it's been trod over 100 times, or, kind of a lay of the land lets you know what's going on, and then you can go from there. And it also gives you the background to know, like, okay, I'm not talking out of my ass, or, oh no, this is actually something brand fucking new, which is neat, but also kind of terrifying. Not that I would know anything about that. It's fine.
Right. So
ran out of steam there, but it's fine.
Me and Kai actively sweating in the chat. What? No! Hides on newsreels. Oh, I missed this comment. Anyone else feeling very called out at the moment? I mean, if the basis of science is that things are recreatable, what we quantify as the value of assets of written down theory crafting. Yeah. All right, look, if y'all are going to take shots every time you feel called out by one of these episodes, y'all are going to have liver failure within an hour.
They were saying I said it's fine, which is why they said take a shot.
Also, see my comment just now.
I mean, yes.
I'm really bad at keeping notes in a way that makes it easier to go back through when I manage things down. The fact that you write things down, though, is important. If the basis of science is that things are recreatable, what would I quantify as the valuable asset of writing down theory crafting? Part of it is that so you have a solid idea of what the fuck you are looking at. So, for instance, heathensoullore.net is an amazing treasure trove. I may not agree with every little thing that Winifred Hodge Rose has written down, but I bought volume 1 and 2, and they're excellent resources, and I recommend them very heartily to anybody that wants a solid example of creating and understanding a living example of heathen soul lore. Sometimes write things down. I mean, granted, but the fact that you were actually writing them down instead of just trying to make your memory commit to it is a big deal. And, whether you're using Google Docs, whether you're using a paper notebook or a combination thereof, the reason that I find it so important to have written down theory crafting is so that you have reference material. Even if it's not something you've written yourself, having reference material is a big fucking deal because it gives you the ability to quantify the experiences you have. And it gives you the ability to quantify the results you get. Part of the point of having this stuff written down and having reference material to begin with is, in no small part, so that you can look at this particular spirit and go, this one's trustworthy with blank. I'm going to reference Jim Stovall's PDF for spiritual accounting. Part of that is having repeatable results so that you can reliably trust that the information you're getting from this spirit, this group of spirits, that group of spirits, is not only a repeatable result that is useful, but is relevant to the stuff you're trying to do otherwise.
Yeah. I do want to push back just a little bit.
Sure.
So I do want to push back on. I don't think it's absolutely necessary to keep strictly great notes. For everyone, and I should specify that like this is case by case, and I'm not saying don't. I'm saying it's not necessarily always the case, and there's two ways I want to go with that. One, some people just don't take good notes. I'm one of them. I'm awful at taking notes. Um, and as a result of that, I've kind of just had to develop a pretty good memory about things, but that's kind of beside the point. You shouldn't also necessarily rely on that. But beyond that, there is, how to phrase, there's a bit of worship of the written word kind of built in there.
Okay.
And I think that there is the transmission and saving of knowledge, yes, through the written word, a tool, not the only tool.
No, I'll hardly agree with that. Especially if you're talking about oral culture, whether it's a traditional oral culture or you're trying to kickstart a new one. Understand that you're going to be using different parts of your brain for recall. If in my case, I have ADHD, if I am telling somebody something that I've been given by the spirits, it's usually more reliable for them to record me in some fashion than it is for me to try and remember it on my own, because it's just so hard.
Oh, for sure.
That being said, I do not want to fetishize the written word. I think that's also a problem in pagan circles. Fully agree with your critique. I think the difference is that whether it's written down or memorized, whatever it is, it has to be committed in some fashion to memory, whether it's paper or your brain.
Yeah. Your brain, somebody else's brain, shared collective knowledge as stories told between you, whatever the case might be.
Yep.
Yeah.
Some really great comments bouncing back and forth. I'm going to highlight some of them.
Yeah, please.
I GDoc and their night exercise has been my new best friend with writing stuff down. I can't use this nice meal quick anxiety. Yes.
Very
yes. Nice. Excellent. I have some very gorgeous and pretty drills, then my BOS is a 4-inch binder. So I get that. I think something, I can't remember who said it, but it was one of the Temple of Arcadia folks, where they will occasionally burn their BOSs or other journal materials after writing down the relevant shit that gets put into the new one. I think that's excellent. And it's a way of keeping your skills and memory fresh and relevant.
Interesting.
Yeah. I use the Spiral College rulebook which roll out because I can't commit to writing nice ones. I also have a personal Discord server for that use. And a personal Discord is a great idea. I will agree.
I have a personal private Discord server. No one's on it but me. And I use it for mostly random stuff that isn't appropriate for anywhere else that I want to make sure I remember. And then some of it's nope, this isn't for anyone else to know. This is just for me, but I do need to remember it. And I won't remember. I might remember the idea. I won't remember those details. That's getting written down. Because as much as I just push back against the written word shit, and my memory is very good, I still got to write down details sometimes.
Yep. And again, sometimes that ephemeral nature of, I'm not remembering this anymore, it's not relevant, does actually hold true even for folks who are neurodivergent like I am. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you've picked up so much theory, it's dross after a point. Is it clogging up your mental space? Cool. Dispense with it unless you really fucking need it. That's the beauty part about being able to write shit down, is you can actually forget it and you are not completely screwed. This is why we have reference materials.
Yeah. And at a certain point, once you've absorbed enough theory and you've built the schemas around it and kind of you've got that lay of the land for whatever you're dealing with in your head,
yep.
Then you don't things either become, I no longer actively remember this, it's just part of things that I know,
right.
Or your models get good enough that they have predictive power, which is also nice. And you don't have to worry about remembering things; you just do them. An example of this: I was the only microbiologist at a lab that I worked at for a while, and most of the people that I was working with were basically fresh out of school, like 1 or 2 years experience, and none of them were microbiologists. Um, and they, like, I was trying to explain things to them, and I was like, "Hey, your micro program here, it's not working, right? It's messed up. Like you're doing a bunch of stuff that's close to right, but it's not right, and here's why." And I caught myself like, "Oh, I just have forgotten. Like, I don't even remember why a bunch of this stuff is right. I just know that, oh, wait, here's why it's right." And like going back and teaching them that, it was like, "Oh, yeah, here's why all of this is right." But I had genuinely, like, there's the saying, I've forgotten more about this than you know. I had genuinely forgotten a bunch of stuff that they didn't know.
Right. So Melkor says, y'all work with some big world cosmologies that are currently being shaped. Sometimes details are the most important bits. I will agree.
Yeah.
Sometimes. It depends on the detail.
Yeah.
Damn it. There was something I wanted to say, and now I can't fucking remember what it was. Shit.
It'll come back.
Yeah, I hope so. It was something to do with this.
Hey, Fan.
Oh, I remember now. So there is a danger in diving so deep into theory that you don't come up for air and do anything because you're so scared that if you don't know enough theory, people are going to attack you.
Mm-hmm.
If you are trying to theorize, not theorize, if you are trying to get so much theory as a background so that people don't come at you, don't bother, because there's always going to be that asshole.
Yeah. No, there's no such thing.
If you're doing it out of insecurity, it's not a good motivation, and it will infect the rest of your work.
Yeah. And frankly, speaking as someone who very nearly went full blown into academia and got a PhD and all of the etc., who is still very much enthralled with the academic process, theory doesn't actually teach you that much. Like, even in academia, where it's like, oh yes, the theory, like, no, you actually learn by doing. Even in academia, you learn about writing by doing it. You learn about science by doing it. There's a reason that all science courses, or most science courses, I should say, come with laboratory sections, is because you have to actually go put your hands in the thing to do the thing. Otherwise, it's just words on page, and it doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, and I mean, if what you're doing is you're collecting enough material to have a cogent understanding of what you're doing and why you're doing it, if you are trying to collect enough theory because you're engaging in something that is either beyond the pale or you're actually genuinely blazing new territory, that's one thing. I'm actually going to highlight this because it kind of speaks to what I'm talking about. Theory is like Flint and Steel. It's not the fire, but it's super useful if you want to fire.
Yeah.
Right. And theory is knowing that you can light a fire with Flint and Steel. The practicality is being able to fucking do it. And if you're experienced, you'll know you'll need char cloth and tinder. Like, you'll know the basic elements of what you need to make a fire. And then it's up to practice and experience to actually get a fire made. So yeah, I appreciate the hell out of that comment.
And, if it's a sacred fire, making sure that you have said the right prayers to the right spirits and have the right person tending the fire so that the actual wood lights instead of just the old charcoal underneath. That's a long story. Don't worry about it.
Just got told to touch grass my local pig. I mean,
kind of.
Like, if your theory takes you so far up or up your own ass that you can't breathe, that's a problem. Because if you're doing all these highfalutin concepts but you can't apply any of this shit, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And like, we're kind of sitting here shitting on theory a little bit, but it is genuinely important. Like, again, as a scientist, I can strictly say, yeah, those other scientists that I was talking about a few minutes ago yeah, some of the things they were doing were actively dangerous. They didn't know better because they weren't microbiologists. They didn't have the theory to know what they were doing. So some of the things they were doing were not just incorrect. They were not extremely dangerous because it was a biosafety level 1 laboratory, but like actually they had biosafety level 2 organisms in their laboratory and they didn't know it and they didn't know what that meant and they didn't know why that wasn't good. And it's like, okay, so you don't have the understanding to know even why this is dangerous. Let me fix it and then explain it to you.
Absolutely. I am currently going through the OBOD Bardic grade, and there are many practical elements of the course. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Good. Yes. And I've heard so many good things about OBOD. Rumbles and fire starting restrictions. And Ralph, I was just thinking about that. So, I mean, where the metal meets the meat is, can I get a fire started? Where you can gauge your experience level is, how long does it take me to get this fucker started? How much effort does it take? You know, for somebody that has been making fire with Flint and Steel for years, they can make it look stupid easy. My first Sacred Fire, when I made it with Flint and Steel, took me 4 fucking hours, and I bashed the living shit out of my hands.
Oof.
Like, I bled for this craft. Like, I bled all over the flint, I bled all over the steel, and I screamed in triumph when I finally got that fucker lit. And it was an amazing initiatory experience for me, and it was wonderful. And the next time, it only took me about an hour,
Nice.
maybe, to get a Flint and Steel fire lit. If you're in a survival situation, that is untenable.
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to make a sacred fire for a gathering, that is also untenable. No.
Yeah.
Use a sacred fucking Bic, if nothing else.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of telling, though, is also like it's.
No, somebody who's been doing survival shit will look at that and go, "Why the fuck did it take you 4 hours?" I didn't have technique. I didn't have experience. It had been literally 10 years or better since I'd been camping. Mm-hmm. So I could, and I've been taking care of sacred fires, but they were lit already, or they were lit with modern means, either matches or a lighter. Mm-hmm. So most of my experience in fire tending, sacred fire tending and otherwise, was with modern tools. I had zero clue on how to use a Flint and Steel. It took literally bashing the shit out of my hands to learn how to do it. And I still have to do a fucking friction fire at some point. And bow drill is probably the way I'm going to do it. So I feel you, Finn.
Speaking of Finn said, Flint and Steel has never been an issue for me, but the damn bow drill still have gotten the damn thing. Yeah, I am actually kind of lucky in that also Flint and Steel has never been a big issue for me, aside from the one time that Kat is grumbling about, which was, it wasn't about the Flint and Steel. That worked just fine. It was about not understanding the spiritual things that were going on. We weren't allowed to start the fire until certain things happened, and it literally would not start. We got the coals underneath the old charcoal from previous fires lit and was glowing and burning before the dry tinder and paper on top. It was fine. That's definitely a thing that happens. Anyway. Sometimes getting rubber to the road leaves you with road rash. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Current taboos were not understood as a male. Yeah, you know, it happens. And actually that's kind of illustrative of the point. Like I had all the practice. I didn't have the theory. I didn't understand what was going on. And that was interfering with the practice. You need both.
Yep. They're two sides of the same coin. Yeah. It's just like the consistent pushback I give with people who are like, well, we're an orthopraxic religion. Okay. So what orthodoxy upholds the orthopraxy?
Yeah. What are you practicing?
Yeah. And it's not that I'm asking, you know, where's your 10 Commandments? It's, What's the thought underlying right practice?
Exactly. And I feel like a lot of people get hung up on orthodoxy and thinking that means that it must be the same for everyone, and that's
always
not
and forever.
Yeah, and
that's not what tradition is like anyway.
Yeah, and that's not what that might be what that means in some like Christian settings, but certainly that's not what that means. It doesn't even actually mean that in those Christian settings, because
right,
like Catholic orthodoxy changes all the time, but that's not the point.
Right.
It's you need to actually think the shit through before you do it, and then go do it.
What in learning is if you know enough theory to feel like you don't know enough, you know enough. Oof. Yeah. I'm gonna need you to parse that again a different way.
If I'm understanding what they're saying correctly, if you know enough theory to feel like you don't know enough, then you know enough.
No. Sorry, no. I will heartily disagree. I don't think you know enough theory in cases such as yours with the microbiologists.
Mm-hmm.
If you cannot tell me why, that is a problem. Because it could be something as simple as we've always done it this way, which is tradition for tradition's sake, which isn't a problem in and of itself, but Grandma always cut the end of the roast off. While valid for that oven, may not be useful for this oven, and you might be able to make a tastier dish.
Yes, although in the case of the scientists that I was talking about, they actually don't fit the mold of what Kai was saying, because they thought they knew enough. They thought what they were doing was correct. They didn't know that they didn't know enough.
Right. Okay.
So it goes back to I think it was the like original quote is from Plato, I think, of like the wise man knows how little he knows or something like that. Yeah. Kind of agree with it. I think it's, I don't know. I've never found that quote to be actually super useful, but
I'll agree with I'll agree with Emily on this one. Knowing that you don't know enough is an important place to pass through, and you don't stop there. Yeah. I would argue don't stop there, because
certainly,
like in rune work, people will be like, well, how do you know so much? Well, to a certain degree, like knowing in terms of book knowledge, I fucking don't, because book knowledge is like this much of what I know as a rune worker. My knowledge of rune work is this big, because I've been doing this shit for over almost 20 years.
Yeah. Ben came through with it.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead and clicky.
Yep. The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing, from Socrates. I got my Greek philosophers wrong.
It's okay. It's understandable.
Yeah. And like, on the one hand, it's a kind of useful quote, right? It's a good thing, because like when you've hit the point where you actually have a decent understanding of things, you do realize that, oh shit, there is so much I don't know that I can never. And that's a person that I am much more willing to listen to personally, because they probably know a lot more than someone who is fully confident that they know everything.
Yeah, the Dunning-Kruger effect is strong with a lot of folks.
Yeah. And it's fairly true, right? There is so much knowledge to be had on any individual subject. Even people with PhDs will straight up say, if they're being honest, yeah, I just don't know most of the things about this subject. Like, I know a lot in my specific area, but there's so much more beyond that. So it's got value, and I shouldn't funny as we're sitting here talking about how to know things and etc. I'm like, oh no, I actually revised my stance on that a little bit. So it's useful.
I think part of the problem is people will look at theory and assume that it's a blanket situation in every case. The classic that I pulled out of the earlier conversation being cold steel works on all Fae. Some are not going to give a flying fuck that you have a pointy stick.
Yeah.
It might just piss them off.
Yeah. As like a general rule, it does tend to work. So.
Right. I mean, again, like we were joking earlier, yes, poking things full of holes does tend to kill them. People die when they are dead.
Tend to, most of the time.
I'm actually going to steal something from a conversation that I'm kind of having on the side with Emily. It's about how peeps are delicious, and that occasionally, like at least once a year, she tries peeps again just to confirm that they are indeed delicious. The theory, year to year, is that peeps are delicious, and the practice is I'm going to try the fucking peeps. Does the theory that you hold actually hold water? And just because it holds true once doesn't mean it holds true for all. And I think the nuance of theory and practice is they're two sides of the same fucking coin. You're developing your theory alongside your practice because practice is how you test theory.
Yep.
And theory is how you quantify practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, or holds true for everyone. It's very true.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like,
yeah, I was gonna say, like, I fucking hate peeps. They're gross. I won't test that practice because I know that I don't like them.
No, I mean it's yeah, no, it's a her thing. I'll buy you the fucking peeps, but I ain't fucking eating them.
Anyway, so we've been rambling on for a little over 40 minutes now about theory. So what's practice looking like for you lately?
So it's taking stuff like I mentioned earlier with the mound workshop that I took with Kat Heath. Part of the practice is making my own Gotavi grid and using them. So part of the experience.
For those who don't know, what the hell is that?
That's what I was just going to get into. So a Gotavi grid is from a certain part of Sweden. It is it was found buried underneath a mound of dirt, and what it is I'm giving a very pared down version.
Yeah, I was going to say. Definitely.
Yeah. So what it essentially does in terms of the actual practicality, I'm going to put the theory of what the Gotavi grid is aside because scholars really aren't fucking sure. But Kat went, ooh, that looks really neat. I wonder if, and started doing work with it. And what it does is it bridges worlds. So you can do it. She started off using it for mound work with the Alfar and the Dead. And so Emily and I took this workshop and we picked up the Gotavi grid and I made miniature versions and burned them in leather. And they have worked exceptionally stupid well.
Nice.
The practicality portion of that being is you can then bring a piece of the worlds together in a place using this grid. It's a really fucking cool piece of spiritual technology that bridges worlds really easy without having to go journey.
Nice.
So instead of coming out of your body and going somewhere, you're kind of like latching onto a piece of that world and bringing it here. Nice. Which has all the fucking dangers associated with that portion of it.
Yeah, no, that's you should know what you're grabbing onto before you do that.
So she's reading from Emily's. She started off experimenting with it and found that it felt very similar to the mound work she'd done previously. So it looks like a mound gateway, or having to visit a physical mound. Definitely agreed because I've done similar kind of work with actual graves and doing Udaseta on them, and the feeling was very similar. So the practicality being, I tested this Gotavi grid theory, and holy fuck, it works exceptionally well.
Nice.
The other thing that we've been doing is been doing ongoing work with Storm and getting into Sather work. And again, this is where having a solid background of theory and practice together makes a lot of sense because we've developed basically what amounts to a curriculum of study that we're going to follow. And we're going to try different kinds of Sather, and we're going to be bouncing ideas and experiences off of each other as we go along. The other thing that I've been doing is a lot of soul work to do with. So I mentioned the Heathen Soul Lore.
Mm-hmm.
So Volume 1 is almost entirely fucking theory. Volume 2 is almost entirely fucking a workbook. The first book is about 500 pages. The other book is 300.
Okay.
She also had Spirit step forward and help her finesse her practice with it. So again, practicality of working with somebody else's spiritual tech and then applying it with your own. What's really fun about this is I'm getting similar enough experiences to other folks who've done this work, including Kat, that we're able to compare notes and go, oh, that's what that is.
Yeah.
So the really cool and fun part, remember to ground, shield, and set cleanse, kids, yeah. Also center. Centering is good.
I don't even distinguish centering from grounding anymore. I don't. They're the same action for me. I realize that doesn't work for everyone, but like for me,
I separate them because I do grounding and centering together most of the time, but sometimes I do centering as a separate activity because I have to shift focus.
That makes sense. You know, actually, now that you phrased it that way, I do that too. Huh.
And this is why having a theory of cleanse, ground, center, shield, and then saying this is how I do it.
Yeah. I wouldn't call it centering though. For me, I don't know what I would call that. Anyway, come back to that.
Okay. The point being is that the centering for me takes a point of this is the focus now. And this might be where I identify the purpose of the ritual or where I re-evaluate where I'm at after cleansing, grounding, centering, and shielding. Getting your wolves in a row. Yeah.
Yes, but not always. The thing that I'm thinking of is I wouldn't call it centering because it's more like putting on a different mask or putting on a different mantle. Oftentimes for me especially, it means putting on a different title or name and shifting what work I'm doing, right? Like if I'm doing... I am a very different person doing... Not a very different person. I function fairly differently, I should say, doing work with Freyr most of the time than I do, say, doing a lot of my pack work, right? Those are, in one, I'm primarily a wolf. In the other one, I tend to have horns. It's different. And they're not mutually exclusive, but like...
So you got a pupper mindset and a horny mindset. Understood. Love you.
You better be glad it's mutual, bitch.
No, I do get what you mean though, because Sarenth, the rune worker, is a different mindset in many ways than Sarenth the dad, for instance.
Yeah.
So part of why I need that grounding and centering together a lot of times is because I am moving out of one mindset into another.
So first, that's what this episode was missing. Inappropriate jokes.
Don't worry, I got you covered.
Yeah.
In theory.
And also, I'm imagining a wolf with ram's horns. It's wild. Actually, I should not say horns. I should say antlers because it's generally more antlers than horns. But yeah, it's fine.
That's okay. I was just imagining you as the wolf character from Monster Rancher.
I am not familiar.
Never fucking mind. It was before your time.
Yeah, probably. It's fine, old man. You'll be all right.
Fuck off. I wanted to hit this before. I know Kai is rebooting, but I wanted to. They're back. Good. Where'd it go? Gosh, I use energy work as a massage technique, and sometimes I get really into my client's physical existence. Yes, And for me, centering would be also taking a moment to step away from their physical soul and reaffirm that your soul and their soul are not merging.
Yeah, that's not a thing you generally want to do if you can help it, unless that's something you're doing very specifically. But yeah.
And I also wanted to point this one out. Part of my practice is from Finn. Part of my practice lately is working to see/develop my sacred grove in the astral. It's been very fun and interesting part of this path. That's boss. I love that they incorporate that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, for me lately, practice has been very physical stuff, very kind of getting shit in order and making that sacred. Like I was saying before the show, I actually went to the hardware store today and picked up the stuff I need. The house that I just moved into has a garden plot in the back, so I'm going to be clearing that out probably tomorrow, because this house hasn't been lived in for at least 3-4 years at least. So, I've got a lot of work to do in the backyard to get the garden set up. And strictly speaking, that's going to be sacred work for me. That's going to be work dedicated to Freyr. Among others, primarily him, but others I'm sure as well. Getting my house set up, I was very kindly reminded that about a week or so ago that I had not actually officially asked any of the many Hearthkeeper goddesses and gods that I worship to bless my new home. And I was Frigga just looked at me, basically tapping her foot one night, and she was like, "You still aren't comfortable here. What have you forgotten to do?" And I was like, Oh, I still haven't asked for any blessings on this house by the people who would normally bless a new home. Oops.
Did you cleanse with fire and ice?
No, because that's not. I did my own method.
Okay.
I did pack stuff to cleanse and.
This is my shocked face.
Yeah, no kidding. I did all of that, but then Frigga was still looking at you like. It's like, yeah, okay, sure. Because what I had basically done was made an encampment instead of a home on accident. It's fine.
Oops.
I was like, man, I'm like mostly moved in, but it still feels like I'm not living out of boxes, but it feels like I'm living out of boxes. What has happened? Oh, right. Sorry. Please. And then it flipped overnight. It was fine.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what's been a lot for me. I've also been mostly on a spiritual break dealing with the move and a bunch of work stress, which has been a nightmare, but it's fine now. Things are leveling out. Also, that's in large part why we're having the episode on a weird night, because I'm in a phlebotomy course on Tuesdays and Thursdays at our normal time, and also have been moving and dealing with shit, so I wasn't available on a normal night.
Rest? Weird.
Yeah, no kidding. Next month will also likely be on a Wednesday, because again, next month I'll still be in class. After that, I should be out of it. It should be fine though. Just a heads up for those listening. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the next step of our new home. It hit me today. Well, yes, I'm referencing the Light course again. Doing today's lesson to provide a home blessing. Yep.
It's almost like when the spirits are woven into every part of your life, they want to be woven into every part of your life. This is shocking news.
Fucking weird. Something that Emily took a minute to remind me of was part of the practice for me has also been recognizing when I need rest and recovery time. So you can't just do nothing but study and do practice. You actually occasionally have to do other shit, it turns out.
Well, and the way that humans are as we're increasingly finding physiologically built, we're actually supposed to have more rest time than active time. We're actually supposed to have more rest and relaxation than we are working. Turns out,
Oops.
It's almost like capitalism is toxic from the top down. Anyway,
yeah. So part of my practice has been literally saying, I'm getting burnt out. I need to step away from everything and just do my own thing for a minute.
Yeah.
Also, yes, fuck capitalism.
Sweet. I was about to click on that.
Rest in this economy? Sign me up. Absolutely. Take care, Kat. See you after the show. The other thing that I've been doing as far as practice is taking time at shrines, like especially the ones that you've seen down at the woods, our outdoor shrines. Folks, I think can. If I haven't yet, I can post pictures because they just let me take some more pictures. Last time we were down, and part of this was making time for solo Udaseta, because a lot of my spirit work I actually do with Emily. She and I are actually quite tight in terms of a lot of her spirit work, soul work, all that kind of stuff. And I wasn't taking a lot of time for me. So part of my thing was actually being able to say, and I didn't even initially say, like, I need to do this on my own. It was more like a feeling of I need to go on my own. And we just kind of went, almost a silent agreement of, all right, I'm going to do this on my own. So part of it has been just being out in the woods next to the shrines and just vibing and just being in that space. And the Udaseta actually didn't itself last all that long. For those who don't know, Udaseta is the spiritual practice of sitting out. But for me, sometimes these spiritual practices dovetail into one another. And that's a good point. She literally got told not to come.
Yeah.
And was thankfully invited along later. That for me was a really big recharge point that I didn't know I needed. Sometimes the spirits will just reach up and do you a solid because you're trying to be nice and inclusive and helpful, and they're like, no,
don't be by yourself. Yeah.
I truly enjoy my rest time. Part of me time now is just playing darts with one of my best friends. Just disappearing into the woods. Yeah. The fact that it's now warming up and I don't have to put on 20 layers of shit to go outside, it's going to be a lot more conducive to me just walking out the door and walking through the woods on my own.
Yeah. That's been a thing I've actually really been enjoying lately is I've got this house all to myself, right? This new house that I've moved into. And it's an interesting distinction for me because the last time I lived alone was not a great time, if we're being honest. Like it was the middle of kind of the height of lockdown. I was in a really stressful spot. And I wasn't really moving out on my own by choice. Plus a bunch of other burnout and on and on and on. And I didn't really have much in the way of support system around me. So I wasn't just living by myself. I was genuinely, not entirely, but pretty alone. Right. It was a solid half-hour drive for me to get to anyone that I knew. I didn't know that many people. I was only seeing other people aside from at work, like once a week at most. And that's pretty lonely. Now, though, almost all of those things are different, right? Like, now it's not lonely, it's being alone. And that might not seem like a distinction on the surface, but like that matters.
I get it. I have been in crowded rooms and felt loneliness, but choosing to be alone and to be in not necessarily my own presence, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. In the quiet, physically by myself.
Yeah.
And even though it's almost never quiet because I got the ADHD thing where I can't stand to be in a quiet room, right? Like I have to have a noise pretty much. But one, it's also highlighted very clearly. I'm never alone, right? Like gods and spirits are here, but also it's different, and I'm rather enjoying it. It's definitely taking getting used to, but I am rather enjoying it, which I did not last time, which is interesting and nice.
Lonely versus having a low time are variable things. You
Yeah.
can be lonely even if you're surrounded by people. Very true. Oh, this is a very good point. I'm glad Eleanor brought it up. What's the point of all that work if you don't enjoy it?
Yeah, which is also bouncing off of Melkor's point of you got to take time to sit in the rewards of your work, like taking time to sit in a garden once you finish putting in the flowers.
So this is the other part of practice, though, right? Like, it's not just I'm gonna bust my ass and do all this work. It's like, to what end?
Yeah,
If you're gonna put the time to do the theory and the practice. Why?
What are you doing? Yeah.
So I do a lot of rituals for gathering power. I do a lot of rituals for, and I'm pretty blunt about it with people and with the Vatir alike.
Mm-hmm.
Because the point of gathering power is to be able to do shit. But part of the power of being able to do shit is, I'm glad she just spat this out because it was like right where I was going. Taking time to chill with your spirits if you've built those relationships. Like, yeah, sometimes having the there's this monologue that John Goodman had in a movie, and I can't fucking remember what the movie was called, but he talks about having fuck you money. That's part of it. And that's kind of like, to a certain degree, why I do some of the spirit work I do, is because if I need to walk away from the spiritual situation, I can, because I not only have the will, I have the ability to say, nope, I'm shutting this shit down, we're done here.
Yeah. Yeah. That is getting to a point, and I think that's also a distinction between part of why practice is important as being paired with theory, because if you know what you're walking into, that's great, but if you can't do anything about it, okay, then you're just scared.
Right. And so that's the difference between somebody that knows how to work with spirits or knows how to do a piece of magic versus not. Ooh, this is a good one. See, with Freya is important. You basically have no connection outside of that, but that's nice.
Yeah. But they all have antlers. Jesus.
I mean, you're not wrong.
You're not. That's the worst part.
See, the best part is I'm thinking about like a little fucking corgi with antlers. Or like a Boston Terrier. With a hobble kind of voice. Going after a ball. Anyway.
You're going to get stabbed one day.
I mean... spear, sword. I mean, I've been stabbed a number of times in various situations, so
it's
add that to the pile. So practice. I've got practice being stabbed. It's okay.
Yeah. But like that's another thing too, though, is at a certain point you get enough practice under your belt, you can walk into a situation, and even if you don't know exactly what's going on, and don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean walking in blind if you can help it. But that's another thing that comes with experience. You can eventually walk into a situation and be like, nah, I'm pretty sure I can handle this. And if I can't, I can at least get the hell out of here. And yes, Eleanor, that is Tin Cup.
Yes, it is absolutely Tin Cup. Yes, so good.
I'm going to have to get a hold of that if it's pretty good. I haven't had it before.
It's really like, thank you for the Glencairn. These are fucking amazing. They really up the whiskey game.
They really do. And like, I did not think it was going to be that big. Like, just like everyone I know has scoffed at it at first. And you're like, no, it's just a glass. It's not going to make that much difference. It's really, but it does. It makes a difference.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
I think too that the thing about theory and practice that is often overlooked is it's not just about having the theory so that when you do the practice you're doing it right. It's I did not professional weightlifting, but I did weightlifting for a while, And there is a marked difference between somebody who knows how to lift shit and somebody who is fucking around.
Yeah.
And somebody who's fucking around can really do themselves deep harm because they're not doing their exercise correctly.
Yeah. Well, and the two, like we've been saying kind of all night, the two inform each other, right? Like someone who has really good form can lift a lot more than someone whose form is terrible with equal strength.
Exactly.
And similarly, you know, like I was saying earlier, even if I don't know exactly what's going on in a situation, I generally have enough practice chops that I can walk into a ritual and get an idea of what's going on and know how to approach things and do what I need to do.
So there's something I wanted to point out too, because the difference between weightlifting for bodybuilding and weightlifting for strongman competitions, and then lifting weight as part of a job, like some of these corn-fed country motherfuckers, right? So, you know, when you're body sculpting for weightlifting competitions, that is a different set than lifting for a strongman competition.
Yeah.
Looking at Bjorn Halverson, he is built like a fucking tank. And I mean, like, the motherfucker is basically, like, round. And people are like, oh, man, he doesn't look all that impressive. I'm like, yeah, but you're thinking of, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who has admitted multiple times to steroiding the shit out of himself at the time.
And beyond that, he was also, like, there's a difference. You do different things to your body to sculpt it to get those, like, shapely muscles and things.
Exactly.
Than you do for, I'm going to do work with these muscles. Yeah, he can probably lift more than I can. Maybe. Depending, because once you get to that level of, like, pro athlete, like, no, the heavy weightlifters, they've got a gut. Why? Because they just do.
Right.
But also, like, no, the guy who's built like an actual brick, yeah, he can keep doing that all fucking day. Yeah, his muscles aren't pretty. You know what? He can still continue lifting that shit all day.
And I am no strongman, but a lot of the practicality of my muscle building, besides the weightlifting I was doing at the time in the gym, a lot of mine has to do with being able to react to dangerous situations.
Yeah.
Why is my body built the way it is? Partly because I am walking all the fucking time. Why am I not dropping weight? In theory, because I know the genetic dispositions that I have, it's all about keeping fat around my gut. Otherwise, I would look a lot more lean because I do blow a lot of calories walking at work. But it's genetics. Like that's the sometimes knowing the theory behind why weightlifting works the way it does. Sometimes these Mr. Universe competition finalists get there because they just have the right genetics the judges are looking for.
Oh, absolutely. No, that's
and you can sink as many drugs and as much time as any of these Olympiad level competitive weightlifters, and you're not going to get that body because you're just not going to. That's just not part of your orlog. Sorry.
Yep. No, and that's a huge part of it too. Like I was going to say, like part of it for you is you have diabetes. That affects things. Like that has a major impact on how your body processes, how your metabolism works. Like quite literally, how you break things down is different.
And I'm going to apply this to spiritual stuff. Some people are literally just better wired for certain shit. Now, this is not to take a deterministic point of view that your spirit wiring, your genetic wiring, blah, 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 says anything particular. I am not taking it in that direction. But I am a diabetic. There is a genetic component. It is part of the background of why I'm a diabetic now. And there are certain spiritual relationships that I have in response to having diabetes. Now, that might sound really fucking weird, but Bear Spirit stepped up in the way that they did. In no small part, I was studying with a native friend of mine at the time, and Bear Spirit started stepping up and saying, look, if you observe these taboos, I will help you with your blood sugar. And Faith and Begora, I started observing the taboos, and my blood sugar started leveling out. Now, I had to take my metformin. I had to take my fast-acting insulin. I had to take my long-acting insulin. Bear Spirit wasn't taking any of that shit off my hands, but he did help.
Yeah.
And knowing that there are spirits that will help you with certain things, that there are people that will help, and people are spirits, so, for me, part of the practicality of applying the theory of working with the spirits in this case was Bear specifically coming to me and saying, look, I know you're having a lot of issues, because this was when I was having very, very high levels regularly, and I couldn't get the shit down no matter what I did. And Bear Spirit said, look, this isn't going to fix everything, but let's work on this.
It'll help.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if I'm remembering, no, never mind. Don't worry about it. As kind of another example, in a kind of a similar vein of like, you can do things even if it's not your normal, even if it's not what you're built for, but there's still going to be impacts. So I was doing some work with another member of Pack Tradition, who is much more coyote aligned. They're coyote. They do coyote things. And I was specifically doing coyote work with them, because that's not a thing that I do very often. And as part of it was some journey work, and for that journey, I was coy wolf. I was
nice
mixed breed coyote and wolf. And I was told straight up, you have too much wolf in you to be straight coyote. Like, it would, if I worked at it, maybe, if I did a bunch of work with coyote specifically and was doing that very constantly for a long time, yeah, I could maybe get there. Wait, Indy. Yeah.
Oh, hi.
I was gonna not name names, but yeah, I was doing some work with Indy. And it was actually right after Convo. And I was coy wolf, and I was told straight up, yeah, you can do coyote stuff, but you have too much wolf in you to be straight coyote right now. So I was still able to do the thing. It was very impactful, very meaningful. I learned a lot. It was very wonderful. But also I was coy wolf. I wasn't just coyote. That's how it was.
Right. I suck at shapeshift work. Dionysus says, well, that works on that. I mean, the thing that I want to return to is that not everybody has to be good at everything.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said for, there are some things that I am exceptionally good at. There are some things that I am really absolutely useless at. One of those that I can keep returning to is astrology, because people will say, oh, you have a fire sign and blah. And I'm like, you're speaking Greek again. This is great.
I do?
Explain to me what that means. Right. Like, oh, you have, Sagittarius in this house. Great. Is the house on fire?
No, I'm not that concerned then.
Right. I mean, and I don't mean to poke fun just at astrology. It's just one of those where I know that my experience and my desire to learn that much math is nil.
Yeah. As Emily says, no one can be great at everything. Everyone will have their areas of natural talent and areas of expertise. And that's just how it is. Like, there is, yeah, you can, without trying, there is a line between pigeonholing people unnecessarily into roles that are arbitrary, and then there are realities, right? Sarenth and I both have ADHD. That's a very genuine, in our society, disability. Which
it's not a fucking superpower, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It enables me to do some really cool shit, but
yeah, there are components of it that sometimes feel like a superpower, but most of the time, no, I can't remember to do my fucking laundry to save my life. But it's, again, it's like, we can be really great at some things and still genuinely be physically incapable of doing others.
Yep.
And that's just how it is.
Oh, what's your Venus? Is there a second Venus? Is she mad? I don't want to make her mad. I mean, genuinely, that is sometimes how people look at me when I talk about the runes.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean they're stupid. It doesn't mean they're untalented. It doesn't mean that they lack skill. I have hyperfoci. And the religion and the runes and the various stuff that I do as a heathen just happens to align with my hyperfocusing.
Yeah.
It's nice. Except for when I can't stop fucking thinking about it and I need to do something else.
Right.
It's not just like an intrusive thought kind of a thing. It's to a certain degree, like my life is built around this stuff. So like I think about this stuff a lot to begin with. And I'm doing this I'm doing this show in my fucking free time. So like I think about this shit a lot.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So I am noticing that I'm getting increasingly dark on camera as the sun sets behind me. We've been going for an hour and 15 minutes. Do we want to wrap it up here with any kind of closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think. Well, real quick, like Sarenth, like the scary rocks that yell at people calling you shocked. I mean, you're not wrong.
Also, Indy, we're glad to have you here as well.
Please come for the after show. That'd be awesome.
Yep.
My closing thoughts on this are that theory and practice are two sides of the same coin, and they're not the only fucking coin that's important. I think that denigrating experience, denigrating theory, denigrating practice doesn't help. If anything, it tarnishes the coin and it makes it less useful to the task of basically purchasing your ability to get through life, really. Yep. So I think that theory and practice, being two sides of the same coin, doesn't make one better than the other. They need each other. And being steeped in theory alone isn't going to make you a good practitioner. But having no basis in theory is going to make it much harder to have a solid ground from which to base your practice. So to me, these two work together.
Yeah. I'm very much in an agreement, and as closing thoughts, I would just say that, like, even as someone who is very genuinely doing a bunch of new shit and is, cut my teeth on chaos magic, like, you need both. Even if you're doing shit that's entirely new, how do you know it's new? How do you know that what you're doing is at least moderately safe? To use a science example, you got to know what the gloves you are in order to put them on to keep you safe. Like, got to know what your PPE is, and if you don't have the theory to know that, or at least have an idea.
Right. And the thing is, I'm sorry, this is your final thought. You don't have to have completely solidified ideas around theory or practice.
Yep.
Like, it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to take in new information and go, well, that shit don't work no more.
Exactly. Both will change. Both will change.
Like finding out you cannot use certain kinds of gloves because your skin reacts to them. That doesn't mean that the gloves are useless. It means you can't use those gloves.
Exactly. Right. Both of those things are going to change over time. Oh shit, we found out that this thing we're doing is actually super dangerous. We're going to not do that anymore. That doesn't mean, yeah, you were wrong for doing it in the first place, but you didn't know. So change it now. That's all you can do. Like, yeah.
Yep. I think in the search for good theory and good practice is humility to be wrong, but also humility to understand and know when you're right and to stand in that knowledge.
Yeah. And then to turn around again and stand in that knowledge and then realize, oh shit, I wasn't as right as I thought, or oh shit, something changed and I'm wrong again. And those things go hand in hand. They interchange over time, over space, over situation.
Yep.
It changes. That's not just okay, it's good. All right, on that, folks, we will see you in the after party if you make it. If not, then we will see you next month. Have a good night. And be well out there.
Yep, that's the